A warm welcome to all taxpayers and my professional colleagues who have been struggling with the same reassessment notices that first travelled to the Supreme Court in the case of Ashish Agarwal, again travelled to the Supreme Court in the case of Rajeev Bansal, and there's been no astonishment if they again travel to the Supreme Court given the rulings that have been coming in. My name is C.A. Siddhant Goel and I am here to discuss and bring some hope and some defenses on the notices that have been coming in pursuant to the unfavorable or the partly favorable ruling of the Supreme Court in the case of Rajeev Bansal versus Union of India. To begin with, let us try to summarize the issue that has been affecting these litigations and has been behind these litigations that have happened all throughout the period of a few years. So initially, as we all know, there was a COVID pandemic that came in. In 2020, a lot of things had to come to a halt because the COVID pandemics stopped everything. There were lockdowns across the country, offices were not operating, and hence there was naturally an act that came in wherein the limitation period for proceedings which was ending on 31st March 2020 was extended up till 30th of June 2021, including several notifications that came in later. It eventually got extended up till 30th of June 2021. The issue that came in was that from 1st April 2021, a new Finance Act, that is Finance Act 2021 came in and brought in an entirely new reassessment regime. This new reassessment regime was applicable from 1st April 2021, but these notices under the extended timelines of TOLA were being issued until 30th of June 2021, and that too under the old law. Now, what happened was that High Court squashed these notices since they were issued under the old law. Allahabad High Court in the case of Ashish Agarwal, other High Courts in other cases. All of these matters were bunched together, went back to the Supreme Court, the lead case being Ashish Agarwal versus Union of India, and Supreme Court deemed these notices as show cause notices under section 148A(b), and these notices were basically revived. An instruction was given to the assessing officers to issue a show cause notice where they will provide an opportunity to the assessee for being heard, and in view of the new regime there was this option that was embedded within the statute itself. They will give that opportunity. Once the reply is received from the assessee, they will issue a notice under 148 if the case is deemed fit, obviously. So that was the ruling of the Supreme Court in the case of Ashish Agarwal. The issue arose, multiple issues arose out of this particular judgment. Issue again travelled back to the Supreme Court in the case of Rajeev Bansal versus Union of India. Again was largely in favour of the revenue. But what we are here to discuss is the few defences that are available, either being explicitly mentioned in the ruling itself or implicitly. First of all, let's look at the different assessment years that are involved and the applicability of TOLA thereon. As you can see on my screen is a table. This table has been exactly copied from the judgment of Rajeev Bansal, wherein the revenue has given this table and it's been accepted by both the parties. This is the case of first assessment year 13-14, 14-15 and 15-16. If you see 13-14, 14-15, if you see the 3-year timeline, TOLA never kicked in because it was before 31st March 20. The 3-year timeline, just to specify, is applicable for cases where 50 lakh or less, so basically which are less than 50 lakh in terms of your additions in income. These cases will be covered under the 3-year timeline. Other cases are covered within the 6-year timeline. 6-year timeline being the lower of 10-year under the new law and 6-year under the old law. So the 6-year timeline is applicable on the cases where there are 50 lakh or more additions. So if you see the 3-year cases, TOLA is not applicable. For the 6-year cases, TOLA will apply and will take the timeline to 30th June 21. 15-16 is a very interesting issue, but because in 15-16 you should be very joyous if your notice is 15-16, because revenue itself has said that 15-16 has no legs to stand. Because if you see the 31st March 19 period was not in TOLA, 31st March 22 was beyond TOLA because TOLA was only up till 30th of June 2021. So TOLA will not apply, and hence these notices pertaining to 15-16 will have no legs to stand altogether in any case. Now coming to 1617 and 1718, as you will see, the 6-year notice again same logic applies, but for the 3-year notices we can see that they have been extended up till 30th of June 2021. With that you can see that the notices would be valid. But there's another issue that remains. If you recall, I just mentioned a while back that after the Supreme Court ruling, a reply was to be received from the assessee after giving them an opportunity of being heard, and that particular reply was to be considered. After consideration of that reply, a 148 notice was to be issued if the case is deemed fit. This 148 notice was also be governed by a limitation period. This limitation period has been discussed in the ruling of Rajeev Bansal and has also been basically understood by the high courts in the case of basically Ram Balram Build Home. Ram Balram Build Home, Delhi High Court is a case where this issue has been discussed in quite detail, and I am presenting an example on my screen for that itself. If you see, in this case, a notice was originally issued on 1st May 2021. This was deemed to be a show cause notice under 148AB. An opportunity was provided to the assessee, and the assessee replied within the statutory timelines, and on June 18, 2022, they basically received the reply. So the assessing officer received the reply. Now the timeline for the limitation will start ticking from the time the assessing officer receives the reply in the words of the Supreme Court. So the 1st May 21 to 30th of June 21, that was the original time that was available. We'll put the date of the original notice up till 30th of June 2021, and we'll add that time gap to this original date when the reply is received, and we'll reach to the date of limitation. This particular date of limitation that we'll reach to will be considered as the final date until which 148 can be issued. So if 148 is issued say on August 18 in this case, it will have to go no legs to stand, barred by limitation, lack of jurisdiction, and that particular notice will have to go. If your case is such, you can pursue either a writ or you can raise this issue in appeal. Both of these are acceptable means to raise this particular issue. Now I'll be coming to the next case, which is much more interesting, but involves a little bit of judgment from our side. So if you see, I have tried to apply these facts to a slightly different case scenario, and this slightly different case scenario relates to an assessee wherein the assessee has failed to give a reply for whatever reason. The assessee received an opportunity on May 27. 14 days was given to the assessee. Original notice was issued on 30th April 21. The opportunity was given on May 27, 22, and the assessee failed to reply within the period of 14 days that was specified within that notice itself. So we'll reach to the date when the assessee was supposed to reply by adding 14 days to May 27, 2022. The original limitation period, as we added in the last case, will also be added here. That is, in this case, from 30th April 21, the original notice, to 30th June 21, the time available to issue the original notice, will be coming to 61 days. If we'll add these these periods, we'll come to a limitation period of August in 2022, and within that particular limitation period, we will see if a notice is issued say on August 11, 22, that notice will have no legs to stand. So if you see, with this and the previous case scenario, many of the notices, in fact most of the notices, will have to go, and there would be not much left for the department to argue in these particular cases, unless the Supreme Court again overturns these and there's another round of litigation. But we can only hope that the litigation now comes to an end and there is peace for the assessees to go on with their lives, because they can they can pursue things other than tax litigations in their lives. So with that, let's come to the final defense. The final armor for defense is the approval. For this, I'll be going back to the original timelines that I discussed. First of all, let's try to see these timelines. If you see 16, 17, 17, 18, you see that the 3-year notices were within the timeline of the 3-year timeline ended on 31st March 20 and 31st March 2021 respectively, as you can very well see here, right? Within this timeline now, the approval was not taken, the notice was not issued. The notice was issued somewhere in between of these timelines, that is up till 30th of June 21. So if we see, the 3-year timeline was exceeded, hence the approval should have been taken from the higher authority. As we can see in the new law, Finance Act 21 law, the higher authority, that is PCCIT, will have to, in this case, second case, you can see the main authority is PCCIT. There are other authorities as well, but practically we'll see PCCIT only coming in here. PCCIT will have to give the approval. So in 1617 and 1718, in those cases where the PCIT has given the approval rather than the PCCIT giving the approval, the notice will have to go. The notice will have no legs to stand, no jurisdiction, and for the want of jurisdiction, for the want of an approval, a valid approval under 151, that notice will go. And again, you have this defense available. For this defense, I'll point out to the ruling of Bhagwan Sai Sharma, Delhi High Court. For all of these rulings, I'm also putting in a link in the description where I've done a write-up. You can take all the citations from there if you want to go through those rulings. With that, I'll conclude my discussion. These I just say that these two line of defenses are definitely available to the SEs, and in large number of cases, there's a lot of defenses available on this end. Other than that, you obviously want to also look at the merits of your case and try to argue on that side. If you are going for if you are pursuing the appeal, if you are going for a writ, you will be targeting these specific issues of jurisdiction itself and trying to put an end to this litigation. Thank you for your time. I'll just conclude by saying that if you have any questions, any comments, you can please drop them in the comment section of the video and I will try my best to reply to them. Again, thank you for your time and thank you for the patient listening. Thank you.